Donald. He's an upstanding American.
No, you're not hearing things. That's Joy Behar admitting her respect and adoration for Donald Trump.
Who's mad? Donald Trump. Joy said the guy wears a tube.
He says that it's his own hair. So I believe him because I believe Donald. He's an upstanding American.
Yeah.
But America doesn't believe him. We've gotten, a letter poured in yesterday. Asking, is that really his hair?
Oh, my God.
Okay, you ready? Come in. Let's check it out.
No, it's true. It's real.
It's not very pretty, but it's real.
You recently said about President Obama, I'm going to quote you, he grew up and nobody knew him. Nobody knows who he is until later in his life. The whole thing is very strange. What are you driving at there? Are you a Bertha, Donald?
Okay. Something on that birth certificate that he doesn't like.
Oh, my God.
That's a terrible
That is
thing
just
to say.
Whoopi, I'm telling you.
3 pounds.
Whoopi, I love you.
Donald,
I'm telling
I love
you.
you too. I think that's the biggest pile of dog mess I've heard in ages.
The question is, why not show it, right?
All right, guys, so what you just saw there was the cackling hens on The View a long time ago, loving Trump before they were paid and told by their liberal media handlers that now all of a sudden they have to hate Trump, okay? It's the same thing when it comes to black people and rappers. They used to love Trump, okay? Trump was talked about all the time in rap songs, how rappers looked up to Trump and trying to be rich like Trump and try to have all the same things that Trump has. And then all of a sudden, their handlers told him, no, you got to hate Trump because Trump racist, Trump bad, orange man bad. So now they hate Trump, right? Again, this is a common theme amongst those in the liberal media and Hollywood and in the entertainment industry. All these people love Trump until they were told that, hey, you got to hate Trump. You got to hate Trump so much that you have to take joy in seeing him potentially be thrown in prison because of politically motivated persecutions against him by the Biden administration and the Democrat Party. And that brings me to this video right here from The View, in which this panel is going to erupt and question whether or not Alyssa Farah Griffin is on drugs, because she admits that, hey, these political persecutions against Trump, these trials are actually backfiring, especially in the wake of the polls showing that Trump is leading over Biden, okay? Trump is about to basically extend his lead over Biden. I mean, he's dominating in swing states. He's dominating in national polling. And Alyssa Farah Griffin is going to make an interesting point, again, about Trump being in court versus some of the other things that are happening in the media and how, again, it seems to be working out in Trump's favor. And this reality is a reality that the cackling hens clearly and obviously don't like to hear. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Well, as it turns out, there are a lot of major issues happening in the country, around the world right now. U.S. abortion rights being stripped, nationwide campus protests over the Israel-Hamas war, and you know whose criminal trial, just to name a few. So with all of this going on, can people even navigate? Because it feels like it's just like a media blitz of everything constantly all the time.
Mm-hmm. So I am in such a good mood today, and I hate to raise this point, but I have to. We've got to ring some alarm bells. The election's 7 months out. I don't trust polling. I do agree with that. I think you can take it on aggregate, and if the polls on aggregate are to be believed, Donald Trump very well may be president in 7 months. And here's what I fear. My initial thought was him being on trial and in a courtroom and not on the campaign trail was going to hurt him. I'm starting to think that it doesn't in the same way, because he's not out there saying crazy things. He's not saying immigrants are poisoning our blood. He's actually has to kind of sit there silently with his hands folded. So what the media, or what people are seeing when they turn on the media, not that crazy time piece we read yesterday about all the horrifying things he's going to do in a second term. They see violence and they see protests on college campuses. They see young people calling Joe Biden Genocide Joe, and it scares people, whether it's you're from a law and order perspective, whether you're on the fence about Biden. I think there's a real reality right now that Joe Biden could pick up swing voters. He could pick up moderate Republicans and suburban women.
And why are you in a good mood again? What was the reason?
That's not why she's in a good mood. He could pick up all the demographics you generally need, but lose young progressives and lose the election to Donald Trump. That's where we are right now.
You said you were in a good mood.
No, and I said I'm sorry. I know, I'm sorry to bring the mood down with my take, but I'm very worried.
But what's the good mood about?
That I just happen to be in one.
What do you want, some kind of drug or something?
I know. I thought we were going to get something different.
I was waiting too. I was like, come on, bring in the good.
You know,
Wow. Wow. Okay, so what you have here are the cackling hens who are so Trump deranged that they're upset that Alyssa Farah Griffin didn't say something bad about Trump, right? Or didn't give them good news. Instead, she gave them bad news, even though she was in a good mood. Okay, so again, they were expecting her to say something to make them feel better about the fact that the Trump trials are backfiring. I think Alyssa Farah Griffin here makes a fair point. I think her point is not all the way correct. Okay, I think that when it comes to Trump's trials and why they're backfiring, well, part of the reason why is not because Trump's not on the campaign trail in the sense that, oh man, Trump goes out and says crazy things and the mainstream liberal media covers it and it turns people off. No, that's not it, right? I mean, in fact, you know, we can say that Trump has been out on the campaign trail saying things and the mainstream liberal media has covered it and basically took it out of context and blown it out of proportion. Like, for example, Trump's comments about poison in the blood, Trump's comments about a bloodbath, all of these things have been taken out of context by the mainstream liberal media, and regular, normal, everyday people who actually listen to what Trump said in full context knows that to be the case. And I think that's actually what has helped Trump, right? In the sense that, yeah, the mainstream liberal media and their obsession with Trump actually helps him out because the coverage of him, the Trump derangement of him at this point is just comical. I mean, just look at the hush money case going on in New York City right now. The mainstream liberal media is literally covering everything, even though there are no cameras in the courtroom. But Joy Reid found it important enough to tell MSNBC, the audience, how big Trump looks in person.
It was interesting being in court, and I started off in the overflow. So I was team overflow at first, and then did move in, thanks to wonderful Lisa Rubin, let me move into the main room. My impressions of Donald Trump, you know, really being in the room with him, he's definitely bigger than you expect. He's taller than you expect, but he's more drawn. He kind of shuffled past. He has a sort of perma scowl on his face. He definitely looked like he was paying attention this time. There was no sort of seeming to nod off or snooze, nothing like that. But definitely the energy between him and his main lawyer, Todd Blanche, was very kind of frenetic. And he didn't seem all that pleased with Blanche's performance, nor did the judge, I will add. So it was an interesting day. I think that they got a lot out of today in terms of David Pecker. But I think the low sort of moment for the Trump defense had to have been that pre-hearing before the jury was actually in the room, when they were talking about whether Donald Trump violated the gag order, this gag order that was issued on April 1st. That was a rough go for Todd Blanche, and Donald Trump didn't look pleased.
Yeah, so it's just weird, right? It's just all around weird just how obsessed they are with this man. And when you juxtapose Trump being in court, while also at the same time holding campaign rallies, still talking about the core issues affecting this country, versus the scenes of the far left extremists, the communists that have taken over these college campuses that are committing acts of violence on campus. Yeah, I think that is really hurting Biden. I really do. I think that's where Alyssa Farah Griffin has a point, because these Trump trials, in my opinion, I think they are backfired in the sense that it is clear and obvious that there's political persecution going on against Trump, but also at the same time, again, the comical nature of how the mainstream liberal media is obsessed with it. But then on top of that, you have, again, these protests and riots that make the Biden administration look bad because everybody knows that they are far leftists, that these are people that have been emboldened by the Democrat Party to do what they're doing. And it's turning people off because I think a lot of people are getting tired of the lack of law and order in this country. And I think that those protests, those riots that are happening on these college campuses are a reminder of what happened during the Summer of Love, in which Democrats endorse this type of political violence, right? And there you have this happening under Joe Biden, and it's most certainly not a good look for him. Ultimately, you could say it's a distraction from what's going on with the Trump trials, right? People, when they turn on their TVs, what they're seeing is violence and chaos happening under Joe Biden, okay? And when they're not covering that, oh, well, you know, they're covering Trump farting in court or something, right? This is what they do. And furthermore, it gets even worse when you consider how the mainstream liberal media is reacting to it, right? You have these Democrats, you have the mainstream liberal media calling the base of their own party anti-Semitic, right? They're saying that, hey, you are anti-Semites, okay? Smearing these people, okay? And listen, here's the thing. These extremists are definitely communists for certain, right? Now, when it comes to the anti-Semitism stuff, I'm just very careful about how I throw around those terms, again, like anti-Semitism or racism or whatever, because it's being used against the left now, but not too long ago, these same terms, again, anti-Semitism was used against the right, okay, for simply disagreeing with the left on certain issues, right? You were an anti-Semite, right? This is what they say. They basically accuse Trump of being an anti-Semite, even though he's super pro-Israel, okay? So, again, I'm very careful with using these terms to describe people, just like I'm not throwing out the G word to describe what is happening in Gaza with the Palestinians. And the reason why is because, again, you got to be very careful when you use these words. Words have meaning to them. But I guess regardless, my point is that the mainstream media are attacking these communists the same way they were attacking people on the right. I mean, they've now compared it to January 6th. And that is not a good look for Biden, right? In the sense that a lot of these young voters, because of the way they're being treated, whether you agree or disagree with it, right? Because of the way they're being treated, there's a good chance that they are going to permanently back away from the Biden administration. It doesn't look like Biden's going to be able to get Israel or Netanyahu to issue a ceasefire unless Hamas agrees to Israel's terms. It doesn't look like Hamas is going to do that. So it looks like the ceasefire is not going to happen. And I mean, let's be honest. I don't think Israel wants a ceasefire for various reasons, because all of this chaos and destruction on these college campuses actually benefits Israel in the sense that it plays into this conspiracy that there's this mass hatred of Jews. And therefore, that's why Jews should be protected at all costs, right? And get all types of special treatment and things like that. This is why Congress, as we speak, is trying to pass hate speech laws to basically make it illegal to criticize Israel.
Inside that definition from the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance is a more pointed definition of anti-Semitism than right now exists in the Civil Rights Act, is the argument that the sponsors of this legislation give. So they want to add more specific language as to what the definition is. So, as these bill sponsors allege, if it's violated on a college campus, that means that the school is not doing its utmost to abide by the Civil Rights Act and crack down on any kind of violation. And so it has a number of different elements, but perhaps the most controversial part of this definition is it says, I'll quote them directly from their website, manifestations of anti-Semitism might include the targeting of the state of Israel conceived as a Jewish collectivity. But it goes on to say that criticism of Israel, like any other country, is not anti-Semitic. It's that element of this, among others, that have led some critics to say that this language could create a chilling effect and actually crack down on constitutionally protected free speech. But I can tell you that while there is that criticism, particularly from Democrats, there are a lot of bipartisan lawmakers who are throwing their support behind this, including the top Democrat in the House, Hakeem Jeffries, who just moments ago said he was going to vote for this legislation. Terry.
Yeah, so I want you guys to understand what's going on here, because you really got to pay attention. There's a lot of people that are not paying attention. And quite honestly, there are a lot of people that are buying into the psyop that is currently going on to, again, take away people's free speech rights, okay? That is the honest to God truth about what's happening, because the politicians swear up and down, oh, no, we're not trying to ban criticism of Israel. However, the definitions of anti-Semitism that they have adopted from the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance are concerning. Like, for example, this definition right here of anti-Semitism, applying double standards by requiring of it a behavior not expected or demanded of any other democratic nation. So essentially, what they're saying is that it is anti-Semitic to criticize Israel for behavior that you otherwise would not criticize any other democratic nation for. AKA, what they're saying is that, well, if you criticize what Israel is doing in Gaza, okay, if you say that it's a genocide, and you didn't speak out about any other nation and what they do, right, the wrongdoings, then therefore, again, that's a form of anti-Semitism. Again, you can see how these definitions are so vague and can be expanded in so many ways to take away people's free speech rights. That is what is happening. And while I'm super annoyed by the fact that Republicans only seem to be able to occasionally agree with Democrats to give money to foreign countries to fight wars that have nothing to do with America and pass anti-Semitism hate speech bills like this, it's not a good look for the Democrats, right? It's not a good look for Joe Biden's reelection chances.
I will disagree about the trials. But I would like to start with the fact that I am so shocked that the Republican Party has a nominee who is a former one-term, twice impeached, indicted with 88 criminal charges and found guilty of sexual abuse, liable for sexual abuse.
And tied with Joe Biden. It doesn't
I'm
make
so
sense.
shocked that that's all the Republican Party had to offer. But what does give me some hope, it makes me a little bit happy with my legal nerd hat on, is that Americans are more likely than not to say the criminal cases don't positively impact their likelihood to vote for him. 33% of all Americans are much less likely to vote for Trump because of the criminal case. And 2/3 of registered voters, 64%, say Trump's hush money charges are serious. If he's convicted, they will not vote for him. I think that is a bright spot. I think that's important. And I do think that people are paying attention to the fact that he's been fined $9,000 for violating a gag order, that he's just losing it. He's farting up a storm in the courtroom. Everyone's writing about that. He's probably just horrified about that. He's sitting there falling asleep. He's now Sleepy Don. There's no Sleepy Joe anymore. I think there's a lot of good stuff happening.
They need to get him some Imodium. But, just because we have such a young crowd here today, I'd like to point out that Harvard, the Institute of Politics, released a poll that they did. And this whole thing that's going on with the Israeli-Palestine problem is ranked at the bottom, near the bottom, that you young people are more interested in 64% inflation, health care, gun violence, protecting democracy, reproductive rights, and climate change. Thank you. Thank you, young people, because we're relying on you to save the country and the world. And remember, you don't have to love Joe Biden. You just have to love your freedom. That's all you have to love.
Well, see, again, this is what I'm talking about. Like, this talking point doesn't work when, quite literally, you see people losing the freedom of speech as a result of the backlash against these protests. Now, again, these protests, some of them are violent. Some of these individuals are saying hateful things, but you got to understand that when politicians move to pass these authoritarian policies, it really makes the whole, well, you need to stomach what is happening, even though you morally disagree with it, because Trump is worse. It makes that argument a lot weaker, right? It really does, okay? I mean, a lot of these people are just like, I don't care about whatever you're saying about what Orange Man is going to do. We just don't like Biden, right? We don't like the fact that Biden's allowing this to happen. But again, it's the fault of the mainstream liberal media, because back in 2020, when this stuff was negatively affecting Republicans, people like Joy Behar, all these people, they were totally fine with it. They were totally okay with it. Okay, they have the right to protest. They have the right to do violence and to do all the other things they were doing at the time, okay? This is what they were saying. Now, all of a sudden, oh, no, they can't do that anymore because it's hurting Joe Biden. And see, because Trump is in court, right, they can't point at Orange Man and say, oh, well, look, this is Orange Man's fault. They can't blame Orange Man. They got to blame Old Man, right? They got to blame him. He's the one that's taking the blame. Again, it's just so funny how all of this is backfiring on them in multiple ways. The Trump trials are backfiring. The political persecutions are backfiring. Emboldening the left-wing extremists, backfire. All this stuff is backfiring.
It's such a low bar, Joy. So, Alyssa, it's interesting because your point actually, something's resonating with me about what you're saying here, because what I came in today thinking is I've always worried about the younger vote for President Biden, because we've watched the debates, the protests, the disagreement nationwide, but especially among young people about what's happening in the Middle East. And it's grown now over the past few weeks that now not only is the young vote a risk to President Biden, but I do think moderates and independents now, because I think optics matter. We say that at this table all the time. Even though it's not Biden's fault, what we are seeing all over the news are these protests. And what
it is Biden's fault. It's 100% Biden's fault. It's the fault of the Democrat Party and mainstream liberal media as well, too, because, again, these individuals were cheering this stuff on in 2020. They cheered this stuff on when Antifa was doing it. They cheered this stuff on when the Roe v. Wade rioters were doing it. They cheer these same individuals on. A lot of these individuals, communists, who hijacked these causes in order to have their little communist revolution, Democrats were supporting these people, right? So to say it's not Biden's fault, no, it is Biden's fault. 100% is Biden's fault.
seemingly out of control. We're watching the young people of all people send their kids to college, and you're watching on TV and they're like, come home, please. Like, it is chaotic, it is crazy. And even though President Biden couldn't march in and fix it, chaos always goes on the present administration. And wait 1 second. The contrast, Alyssa, I had not thought of, is you're right. There is something about Donald Trump's crazy.
He's not out there.
But when you're seeing him sitting still compared to what we're watching.
He's sitting in a courtroom farting.
We don't use that word in our house.
But you guys, you are a couple of negative nabobs. What I see is that very soon, all these kids whose parents are paying almost $100,000 a year to send them to these schools are going to go home pretty soon and have their nice little summer vacations, and it's all going to end.
Delusional. Delusional. It's definitely not going to end. If anything, it being summer is going to actually embolden these individuals to organize and to protest more, because they'll have more time on their hands, right? They'll be sitting home. They don't believe in working. They don't believe in getting real jobs. So again, what else are they going to do? If anything, again, this makes it even more likely that you're going to see more protests, because school is about to be out.
Watch. Can I just point out the fact that what we're seeing is a slice of life on campuses. Right. Not all kids are doing all things. And we are 7 months out. People know who he is. They've made their decisions. People have decided in terms of what they want for democracy. No one who is sitting here is going to tell you who they're going to vote for. I love knowing that. Because when I was a kid, you couldn't ask an adult who you're going to vote for, because it was no one's business. So I'm counting on me as a voter to vote for everybody's best interest, not just mine.
Yeah.
This country is predicated on how we deal with each other. This has always been the way. That's why we've been fighting to go forward. We will always have protests. Who knows who's going to be protesting in 5 months or 4 months? This is all the things you're saying are possible, and I acknowledge them. But I am not worried, because I believe women in particular don't want somebody who says, and he only had to say it once, I am going to decide what a woman's pregnancy is going to be. I'm going to decide. That's what he said. I don't think women want to hear that.
He also said they should be.
Yeah, so again, you have Whoopi here sounding incoherent and delusional as usual, right? Like, she's saying, well, nobody at this table is going to tell you who to vote for, except they all are straight up telling you overtly you should vote for Biden, right? In Alyssa Farah Griffin's case, she's basically saying, well, just don't vote for Trump, right? So you are doing that. And the fact that Whoopi doesn't realize that, again, shows you just how stupid she actually really is. But I find that Alyssa Farah Griffin made a very rare good point on this show, where it does seem like Trump being on trial and these protests happening at the same time is the worst possible scenario for the Biden administration, because when people turn on their TV, what they're seeing are these protests and these riots, and they're not so focused on these Trump trials. Not that I think they're actually really hurting Trump, but it does take the focus off of Trump and put focus on the fact that under Democrats, we have chaos and destruction in this country. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.